Rebecca never thought she'd find herself in this situation, scrolling through Instagram at midnight, lying in bed next to her husband Kyle, and feeling absolutely nothing. No love, no passion, just resentment bubbling under the surface. Kyle was snoring softly, his frame bigger than it had been a couple of years ago when they'd said their vows. Back then, Rebecca had convinced herself that marrying Kyle was the mature, logical choice. He wasn't like her ex, Brandon, the one with the jawline that could cut glass, abs sculpted like a Greek statue, and the confidence that could make a room stop and stare. But Kyle? He was kind, dependable, financially stable, everything Rebecca thought she needed after years of chasing the wrong type of man. But now, lying there in the dark, Rebecca couldn't ignore how much she hated how her life turned out. She hated the way Kyle's body had changed, how he'd let himself go. He wasn't unattractive when they first met, but the weight he'd put on since their wedding made her cringe. She told herself it wasn't just about the weight. It was the heavy breathing when he climbed the stairs, the way his shirt stretched across his stomach, and the fact that he still tried to kiss her, to touch her, to act like they were the same couple who used to laugh over dinner dates and weekend getaways. But they weren't, and Rebecca wasn't sure they ever could be again. Kyle, of course, had excuses for everything. Work was stressful. He'd been putting in long hours on some huge project at the office. His eating habits, a result of grabbing whatever fast food was nearby to save time. The lack of gym time? He was too exhausted after work. Rebecca didn't care. She stopped listening. Every excuse he gave just felt like another reason to pull away. And she had pulled away, physically, emotionally, in every way that mattered. The last time Kyle had tried to initiate intimacy, Rebecca had rolled over and muttered something about being too tired. The truth? She couldn't bring herself to even pretend she wanted him. The idea of being touched by him, of feeling his soft hands on her, filled her with an almost visceral repulsion. She told herself it was his fault. If he cared enough, he'd lose the weight. He'd make himself someone she could desire. But deep down, she knew the problem was bigger than that. She just didn't want him anymore. And the worst part? She couldn't stop thinking about Brandon, about the life she could have had with him if he hadn't left town, chasing some new job opportunity. She didn't love him, at least that's what she told herself. But he was still the measuring stick she used for every man she met, including Kyle. And compared to Brandon, Kyle came up short, every time. Rebecca closed her eyes and sighed. She thought she'd done the right thing marrying Kyle. He was a good man. He worked hard, treated her with respect, and gave her a life she'd always dreamed of. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. And if she was honest with herself, it probably never had been. Rebecca's resentment wasn't something she could keep bottled up for long. It started with little things. Eye rolls when Kyle talked about his workday, passive-aggressive comments about his eating habits, and half-hearted smiles when he suggested date nights. But as time went on, her frustration spilled over, turning into sharp words and cutting remarks she barely tried to hide. One night, Kyle came home later than usual, carrying a bag of takeout and looking drained. "Hey babe, I grabbed that Thai food you like. Figured you might not feel like cooking," he said, offering her a tired but hopeful smile. Rebecca barely glanced up from her phone. "Maybe if you didn't stop for takeout every other day, you wouldn't be so out of shape," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. She didn't even look at him as she said it, too focused on scrolling through Instagram and double-tapping photos of her friends' perfectly curated lives. Kyle froze, the smile slipping from his face. "I was trying to do something nice," he said quietly, setting the bag on the counter. "Well, maybe try being nice to yourself for once," Rebecca shot back, her eyes still glued to her phone. "You can't seriously think eating like that is helping." The silence that followed was deafening. Kyle didn't argue. He never did. He just grabbed a plate, dished out some food, and took it to his office, leaving Rebecca alone with her guilt and her phone. The distance between them grew wider with every passing day. Kyle spent more and more time in his home office, claiming he had deadlines to meet. Rebecca didn't mind. She preferred the space. She filled her time with shopping trips and spa days, charging everything to the credit card Kyle paid off each month without complaint. She told herself she deserved it. She was entitled to some happiness, wasn't she? But even as she splurged on designer clothes and luxury skincare, Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She'd sit at brunch with her friends, scrolling through pictures of toned, fit couples on vacation, and wonder why her life didn't look like that. Why couldn't Kyle be like those men with their six-packs and crisp white shirts that fit perfectly? Why couldn't her marriage feel like the ones she saw on her feed? Her dissatisfaction reached a boiling point one evening when they were getting ready to attend a friend's dinner party. Rebecca stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress and checking her makeup, while Kyle struggled to button up his shirt. She turned to look at him, frowning. "Seriously, Kyle? That shirt is too tight. Can't you wear something that actually fits?" she snapped. Kyle's cheeks flushed, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded and shuffled back into the closet to find another shirt. Rebecca rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, "Unbelievable." At the party, Rebecca found herself gravitating toward the fit, charismatic men in the room. She laughed at their jokes, complimented their outfits, and ignored the hurt look on Kyle's face as he stood awkwardly by the appetizers, trying to make small talk with people who barely acknowledged him. She didn't care. How could she, when she felt so cheated out of the life she thought she deserved? Later that night, as they drove home in silence, Kyle finally broke. "Rebecca," he said, his voice tired but firm. "What happened to us? To you? I know I've put on weight, and I know I've been busy with work, but do you even care anymore?" Rebecca didn't hesitate. "Care about what, Kyle? That you've let yourself go? That I have to pretend everything's fine when it's not? I married you because I thought you'd be someone I could rely on, but you've turned into this." Kyle didn't say another word. The silence was heavy, suffocating, and Rebecca felt a flicker of satisfaction. She'd said what she needed to say. Maybe now he'd finally do something about it. But deep down, a small voice whispered that she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. It happened on a Thursday night. Kyle had just finished a grueling 12-hour day at work and came home hoping for some semblance of comfort. But Rebecca wasn't in the mood for small talk, let alone playing the role of a loving wife. She was on the couch, scrolling through her phone with her legs tucked under a plush throw blanket. "Hey," Kyle said, trying to sound upbeat despite his exhaustion. "How about we spend some time together tonight? Maybe watch a movie or just hang out?" His voice was soft, almost hesitant, like he already knew what her response would be. Rebecca didn't even look up. "I'm tired," she muttered, "and I have yoga in the morning." Kyle stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. "Okay, but it's been a while, you know. I miss being close to you, Becca." That got her attention. Rebecca set her phone down and raised an eyebrow, staring at him like he'd just said the most absurd thing she'd ever heard. "Close to me? Kyle, seriously?" She let out a humorless laugh. "Have you looked at yourself lately?" Kyle's face fell. "What's that supposed to mean?" Rebecca rolled her eyes and got up from the couch, crossing her arms. "It means I don't want to. I can't. You've let yourself go, Kyle. You're omrzitelny," she said, the words slicing through the air like a blade. "You expect me to be attracted to this? To you?" Kyle blinked, stunned. "Rebecca, I know I've gained weight. I know I haven't been at my best, but that's what love is about, isn't it? Supporting each other through the hard times? I'm working on a huge project at work, one that could set us up for the future. I've been stressed, but I've been trying. Don't you see that?" Rebecca's laugh was sharp, almost cruel. "Trying? Kyle, trying isn't enough. You've been stuffing your face with takeout and skipping the gym for months. Don't blame work for that. Blame yourself." Kyle's jaw tightened. "So, what are you saying? That because I've gained weight, I'm not good enough for you anymore? That's what love is to you? Abs and meal plans?" Rebecca shrugged, her tone icy. "I'm saying I don't want to be intimate with someone who looks like this. It's been 6 months, Kyle. 6 months, and I've done nothing but make excuses because I can't bring myself to tell you the truth. But here it is. I'm not attracted to you. Not anymore." Kyle felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He stared at her, searching her face for any sign of regret, any flicker of the woman he thought he married. "Rebecca," he said, his voice trembling, "marriage isn't supposed to be about punishing each other for not being perfect. It's about love, and kindness, and giving each other grace." Rebecca snorted. "You want grace? Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to turn into someone I can't even look at without feeling embarrassed. God, even Brandon." She stopped herself, but it was too late. Kyle's eyes narrowed. "Brandon? Are you really bringing him up right now?" Rebecca crossed her arms tighter, her defensive walls shooting up. "I'm just saying. He took care of himself. He wasn't perfect, but at least he looked like someone you could show off in public." Kyle stared at her in silence for a long moment. He felt the words she wasn't saying as much as the ones she was. He wasn't enough for her. Maybe he never had been. Without another word, he turned and walked to their bedroom, shutting the door softly behind him. Rebecca flopped back onto the couch, muttering under her breath about how dramatic he was being. She picked up her phone, scrolling through photos of shirtless influencers with six-packs, her frustration bubbling into irritation. Why couldn't Kyle just fix himself? Why couldn't he just be the man she needed? That night, Kyle lay awake, Rebecca's words replaying in his head like a broken record. He thought about how hard he'd worked to provide for her, how much he'd sacrificed to make her happy, and how little it seemed to matter. But instead of getting angry, instead of confronting her, he made a decision. He wasn't going to fight her anymore. He wasn't going to beg for her love or try to convince her he was worthy. He was going to show her, and himself, what he was capable of. Kyle started small. He began packing his own lunches for work, cutting out the fast food she loved to mock. He dusted off the treadmill in their garage, setting his alarm an hour earlier to squeeze in a run before his long days at the office. He even started researching therapy, something he never thought he'd need but suddenly felt essential. Rebecca didn't notice, or if she did, she didn't care. She was too busy planning her next shopping spree, too wrapped up in her own world of filtered photos and unattainable fantasies. But Kyle noticed, and for the first time in months, he started to feel a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The progress was slow but steady. His shirts fit a little looser, and he noticed he didn't get winded climbing the stairs as much anymore. He was proud of himself, but he kept it quiet. Maybe, just maybe, Rebecca would see the effort he was making. But she didn't. If she noticed at all, she didn't say anything. There were no words of encouragement, no small nods of approval. Instead, Rebecca carried on as if nothing was changing. Worse, her comments became sharper, more humiliating, as though she resented the fact that he was even trying. One Saturday evening, Kyle found himself surrounded by Rebecca's friends at a dinner party she had insisted they attend. He didn't mind social events, but these gatherings had become harder to stomach. Rebecca used them as an opportunity to parade her dissatisfaction, and tonight was no different. Rebecca was perched on the edge of a bar stool, glass of wine in hand, recounting some exaggerated story about their life at home. Kyle was in the kitchen, quietly refilling his plate, when he heard her say, "Oh, you know Kyle. He's like a little piggy at the trough every time he sees a buffet. I practically have to drag him away." The room erupted into laughter. Kyle froze. He felt his face flush as the laughter bounced around the room, Rebecca smiling smugly at the center of it all. One of her friends chimed in, "Come on, Rebecca, don't be so hard on him. At least he's got a good job." Rebecca snorted and waved her hand dismissively. "Yeah, but what good is a paycheck when the man behind it can't even look like one? I mean, really, he's more like what's the word? A boar? No, wait, a hog, a full-blown farm animal." She cackled, and the group joined in. Kyle felt like the floor had been ripped out from under him. He stood there, plate in hand, staring at the wall as Rebecca kept going, her voice rising with every word. "Honestly, sometimes I look at him and wonder what I was thinking. A man is supposed to be, I don't know, strong, fit, someone you can be proud to stand next to, not someone who looks like they've given up on life." The laughter kept coming, but to Kyle, it felt like white noise. He set the plate down and walked out onto the patio, needing air, needing to think. Later that night, after the party, Rebecca seemed oblivious to the damage she had done. She kicked off her heels and flopped onto the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. Kyle sat across the room, his hands clasped tightly together. He'd heard enough. He'd felt enough. Her words weren't just a one-time outburst. They were a red flag waving right in his face, and he couldn't ignore it anymore. "Rebecca," he said softly, breaking the silence. She didn't even look up. "Do you even realize what you said tonight? What you've been saying for months?" Rebecca glanced at him, her expression bored. "Oh, Kyle, stop being so sensitive. It was just a joke." "A joke," Kyle repeated, his voice calm but firm. "You called me a pig in front of your friends. You compared me to a farm animal. That's not a joke. That's cruel." Rebecca sighed dramatically. "Oh, for God's sake. If you're going to get all emotional about this, I'm going to bed." She got up and headed for the bedroom, leaving Kyle sitting there, the weight of her words settling on his shoulders. He stared at the empty room, feeling the last pieces of his resolve click into place. He couldn't keep living like this. Before you find out what happens next, please subscribe to the channel. The next morning, while Rebecca was out at brunch with her friends, another necessary outing that Kyle funded, he sat down at the computer and started doing some research. Divorce lawyers, financial consultants, everything he needed to make a clean break. As he scrolled through their bank statements, his stomach dropped. Rebecca had been spending his money like water. Designer handbags, spa treatments, boutique fitness classes she never even attended. The monthly total made his head spin, and then it hit him. He was the one paying for everything. Nearly 100% of their income came from his job. Rebecca only worked part-time, more of a hobby than a necessity. She had endless free time to do whatever she wanted, and instead of supporting him, instead of helping him through his stressful, grueling workdays, she'd been funneling his hard-earned money into her selfish whims. Kyle stared at the screen, a cold realization settling in. She didn't just resent him, she used him. And now, he was done letting her. He started drafting an email to a divorce attorney, his hands steady, his mind focused. Rebecca might not see it yet, but her actions had already ended their marriage. Now it was just a matter of making it official. Kyle didn't waste any time. By the end of the week, he'd consulted with a divorce attorney and had a plan in motion. It wasn't just about leaving Rebecca. It was about protecting himself. She might have treated him like he was nothing, but Kyle wasn't about to let her walk away with everything he'd worked so hard for. He started small, quietly opened a new bank account, one Rebecca didn't know about, and began redirecting his paycheck there. He canceled the joint credit cards, well, the ones she hadn't already maxed out. For the ones she had, he let her keep them. His lawyer assured him that they'd be her responsibility once the divorce was finalized, especially since she was the one racking up the charges. At night, after Rebecca had gone to bed, he'd sit in his office combing through every financial detail of their life together. It was like uncovering a crime scene. Thousands of dollars on luxury items, dinners and vacations she'd taken without him. There was even a receipt for a weekend getaway she'd booked with her friends while he'd been pulling overtime at work. He clenched his fists, but forced himself to stay calm. Anger wouldn't help now. He had to focus on the endgame. Meanwhile, Rebecca carried on obliviously, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath her roof. She spent her days at yoga classes, coffee shops, and boutiques, complaining to her friends about how lazy Kyle was. "You wouldn't believe him," she said one day, sipping an overpriced latte. "He's still dragging himself on that old treadmill in the garage like it's going to magically fix everything. Like, sorry, but walking isn't going to turn you into a man." Her friends laughed, egging her on. Rebecca smirked, basking in the attention. She loved playing the role of the suffering wife, the beautiful, vibrant woman stuck with a husband who didn't deserve her. Kyle heard snippets of these conversations through mutual friends who were starting to feel sorry for him. "I just thought you should know what she's been saying," one of Rebecca's old college friends told him quietly over the phone. "It's not right, Kyle. She's not the person she pretends to be." Kyle thanked her and hung up, his resolve hardening even more. He wasn't angry anymore. He was done. Done trying to make Rebecca see his worth. Done bending over backward for someone who saw him as nothing more than a paycheck and a punching bag. One evening, Rebecca cornered him in the kitchen while he was preparing a simple meal, grilled chicken and vegetables, part of the healthier diet he'd committed to. She leaned against the counter, watching him with a smirk. "So, is this your big transformation plan?" she asked, gesturing to the food. "What's the goal here, Kyle? Lose 20 pounds so you can look like, I don't know, slightly less of a dad bod?" Kyle didn't look up. "I'm doing this for me," he said simply. Rebecca snorted. "For you? Please. You're just trying to prove something. Newsflash. It's too late. You've already let yourself go, and no amount of treadmill time is going to change that." Kyle set the knife down and turned to face her, his expression calm but firm. "You know what, Rebecca? You're right. I am trying to prove something, but not to you. I'm proving to myself that I don't need to settle for this. For you. For someone who can't see past their own ego to recognize the damage they're doing." Rebecca blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me? Are you seriously trying to turn this around on me?" Kyle didn't respond. He didn't need to. He grabbed his plate and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, stunned and seething. That night, Kyle finalized his plans. He'd already begun quietly gathering evidence of Rebecca's toxic behavior and documenting her spending habits. He knew it wouldn't be long before she realized something was off, but by then, it wouldn't matter. Rebecca might have thought she was in control, but Kyle was done playing her game. He wasn't just leaving, he was making sure that when he walked out the door, she wouldn't have a way to drag him back. Rebecca was beyond excited for the upcoming luxury event she'd been planning with her friends. It was a posh dinner party on the beach, complete with private cabanas, champagne service, and a live band. It wasn't cheap, of course. Exclusive gatherings like this never were. But Rebecca didn't care. She deserved to treat herself. Standing in front of her laptop, she clicked Pay Now, already imagining the photos she'd post on Instagram. But instead of the confirmation screen, a red error message flashed across the screen. Payment declined. She frowned and tried again. Same result. Her credit card had been declined. Frustration bubbled to the surface as she grabbed her phone and called the bank. After a lengthy hold, she got her answer. The account had been closed by her husband, Kyle. "What the hell?" she muttered, her irritation quickly turning into anger. It didn't take her long to piece it together. Slamming her phone down, she paced the room, seething. When Kyle walked through the door that evening, tired from work and carrying groceries, Rebecca was ready for a fight. She met him in the kitchen, arms crossed, anger radiating off her like a storm. "Kyle," she snapped, her voice dripping with venom, "care to explain why my card was declined today?" Kyle set the groceries on the counter and met her glare calmly. "I closed it," he said simply, his tone steady. "You what?" she shrieked. "Are you serious? You closed our account without even telling me?" Kyle sighed, leaning against the counter. "It's not our account, Rebecca. It's my account. The one I've been putting money into. The one you've been bleeding dry." Rebecca's face twisted in fury. "This is how you want to play it? What is this, Kyle? Some sort of punishment because I won't sleep with you? Is this your way of throwing a tantrum because I don't want to touch you?" Kyle didn't flinch. He looked at her with the calm of a man who had already made his decision. "No, Rebecca. This isn't about punishing you. It's about reality. It's about the fact that we're done." He reached into his bag and pulled out a neatly organized stack of papers, placing them on the counter between them. "We're getting divorced." Rebecca stared at the papers like they were a bomb that had just been dropped in her lap. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out at first. Finally, she found her voice. "What? What the hell is this, Kyle? You can't be serious. You're divorcing me? Over what? Because I'm honest with you? Because I expect more from you?" Kyle's expression hardened, and for the first time in their marriage, Rebecca felt the full force of his resolve. "No, Rebecca. I'm divorcing you because of how you've treated me. If you'd been a good wife, loving, supportive. You could have helped me through the stress. You could have encouraged me to lose the weight, stood by me as a partner, as someone who had my back. He took a step closer, his voice steady but firm. But instead, you insulted me. You humiliated me. You made me feel like I was less than nothing, all while happily draining my bank account and living off the life I worked so hard to provide for us. You've got no shame, Rebecca, no dignity, no morals. Rebecca's face flushed with anger and shock. You're blowing this way out of proportion. You're just being dramatic. Kyle shook his head. I'm being practical. This marriage is over. You've made it clear you don't respect me or care about me, and I refuse to keep living like this. Rebecca's shock turned into panic as she looked at the papers. You've planned all this behind my back? How long have you been scheming this, Kyle? What kind of man does this to his wife? Kyle straightened, grabbing his keys from the counter. The kind of man who finally realizes he deserves better. I'm done letting you tear me down. I've already moved most of the money into a separate account, and I'm leaving tonight. You can stay here, but don't touch the few dollars that are left in our joint account. You'll need them for a lawyer. Rebecca was speechless, her mind racing. Where the hell are you going? She demanded. Kyle's answer was calm but final. On vacation, alone, somewhere far from here. I've spent years giving you everything while you gave me nothing but grief. Now, I'm choosing myself. With that, Kyle walked out the door, leaving Rebecca standing in the kitchen, the divorce papers still sitting on the counter. She was too stunned to even call after him. For the first time, she realized the control she thought she had was gone. Kyle wasn't coming back. A month after that fateful night, Rebecca stood in her half-empty apartment, staring at the divorce papers that had officially ended her marriage. The space felt hollow, much like her life now. Kyle was gone, along with his steady income, quiet patience, and the life of comfort she'd taken for granted. The fallout from their split hit Rebecca harder than she had anticipated. At first, she'd expected her friends to rally around her, to reassure her that she'd done nothing wrong. After all, they'd laughed at her jokes about Kyle, encouraged her to vent about him endlessly. But now those same friends avoided her, their laughter replaced by sharp criticism and judgment. I mean, Rebecca, one friend had said over coffee a week after the divorce was finalized, you kind of brought this on yourself. The way you talked about Kyle, it's no wonder he left. Honestly, we should have said something sooner. Another friend wasn't as subtle. You humiliated him in front of everyone and now you're surprised he walked out? What did you expect? Rebecca tried to defend herself, but the words felt empty. She could see it in their eyes. They blamed her, and maybe they were right. For the first time, she started to question her behavior. Had she gone too far? Was she really the reason Kyle had left? The thought gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. There was no point dwelling on the past, was there? The reality of being on her own hit hard. Bills piled up faster than she could keep track of. The credit cards she'd once used so freely were maxed out, and without Kyle's income, there was no safety net. Rebecca had to pick up more shifts at her part-time job, which she hated. It wasn't just the extra work. It was the realization that she couldn't live the life she'd grown accustomed to without Kyle footing the bill. She hated the silence of the apartment, too. The emptiness reminded her of what she'd lost. She missed having someone to come home to, someone who quietly took care of things while she focused on herself. Kyle had always been there, even when she didn't appreciate him. Now, she was completely on her own, and for the first time, she felt the weight of that loneliness. Rebecca ran into Kyle for the first time about 2 months after their separation. She'd been running errands, looking frazzled and worn out, when she saw him at the grocery store. At first, she didn't recognize him. He was standing by the produce section, examining a bag of apples, and she froze when she realized it was him. He looked different. His posture was straighter, his clothes fit better, and his face had thinned out, making his sharp features stand out in a way she'd never noticed before. He looked good, better than good. Rebecca hesitated before approaching him. "Kyle," she said softly, trying to sound casual. He turned, his expression unreadable. "Rebecca," he said, his tone polite but distant. "What are you doing here?" She felt a pang of sadness at how formal he sounded, like they were strangers now. "Just shopping," she replied awkwardly. "You look different." Kyle nodded. "Yeah, I've been working on myself. Feels good, honestly." Rebecca tried to smile, but it felt forced. "You look great, really." He didn't thank her. Instead, he gave her a small, tight smile and said, "Well, I should get going. Take care, Rebecca." And with that, he walked away, leaving her standing there, feeling smaller than she ever had. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca couldn't stop thinking about Kyle. She started checking his social media, something she hadn't done since the divorce. There he was, posting progress photos of his fitness journey, sharing snapshots of healthy meals he'd cooked, and even smiling in pictures with new friends. It stung to see how much better his life seemed without her in it. He was thriving, and she? She was stuck. For the first time, Rebecca fully realized what she had lost, not just Kyle's financial stability, but his kindness, his patience, his quiet strength. She'd spent so long tearing him down that she never noticed what a good man he had been all along. In a moment of desperation, she decided to reach out. She sent him a message, something simple. "Kyle, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I hope we can talk sometime." His reply came quickly but was as cold as the look he'd given her at the store. "There's nothing to talk about, Rebecca. Please respect my boundaries." Rebecca stared at the message, her chest tightening. She'd always thought she could fix things if she really tried, but now it was clear. Kyle didn't want her back. He'd moved on, and she was left to pick up the pieces of the life she'd destroyed. But it was too late for regrets now. Kyle had made it clear. Their paths had diverged, and there was no going back. Rebecca made a decision. She wasn't going to let her life spiral any further. She was going to prove, to herself and to the world, that she could move on, rebuild, and find happiness again. She threw herself into a self-improvement journey, and even trying out dating apps. At first, she felt optimistic. She matched with several men who fit the image she'd always idealized: muscular, confident, and fit. But the dates didn't go as she imagined. One man told her bluntly over drinks, "You're nice, but I'm looking for someone who takes their fitness as seriously as I do." Another ended their date early, saying, "Honestly, I just don't think we're a good match." The rejection stung, each one chipping away at the confidence she was trying so desperately to rebuild. Rebecca had always been the one who judged, the one who set impossible standards. Now, she found herself on the other side of the equation, and for the first time, she truly understood the pain she had inflicted on Kyle. It wasn't just the rejection that hurt. It was the realization that she had treated him exactly as these men were treating her now, as someone who wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Kyle was thriving. Rebecca saw it all play out on Instagram. His weight loss journey had gained momentum, and the man she once mocked for being soft now posted photos of himself lifting weights at the gym, hiking mountains, and running 5Ks. The comments on his posts were filled with admiration and encouragement, and Rebecca couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. But it wasn't just his physical transformation that caught her attention. Kyle had left his high-stress job and started his own online business, creating a product that quickly gained traction. His posts were full of positivity, updates about his growing business, and moments of gratitude for the people supporting him. He looked happier than she'd ever seen him, calm, confident, and completely at ease in his own skin. Rebecca found herself scrolling through his account late at night, staring at his photos and reading his captions over and over again. She couldn't help but think about what could have been. If she'd been more supportive, more patient, more kind, maybe she'd still be by his side. Maybe she'd be the one he shared those wins with, the one he laughed with after a long day, the one cheering him on. But instead, she was alone in her empty apartment, watching the man she had once dismissed as not good enough become everything she'd ever wanted in a partner. For the first time in her life, Rebecca understood what she had lost. Kyle wasn't just a stable choice or a nice guy. He had always been more than that. And now, As she watched him build a life full of purpose and joy, she realized the bitter truth. She hadn't just lost him, she'd lost the best thing that had ever happened to her, and there was no getting him back. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.